Do you think we over-romanticize sad music? It's something I've been pondering as of late. You know, I like a good chin stroke and ponder. But I don't know why it's something that I've been thinking about. I mean, I generally love like sad music. Anyone that watches this channel on a regular basis knows I praise albums that are sad and emotionally potent and emotionally wrought, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to describe it. And I praise albums like that quite frequently. I mean, the Sabbath album is one of my favourites so far this year. I think that's an incredibly emotionally driven album. Music that's emotionally potent, emotionally wrought, or however else you want to describe it, is usually something that I find myself interested in. I just want to get that out of the way before I get into this video, because anyone that hasn't watched me before may think we just don't like sad music. But I really do like sad music. I mean, when it's done well, when there's good music backing it, you know, it's not just bare bones and lacking in instrumentation, and it's not just like a sad vocalist singing over the top of a guitar. You know, usually I find myself entranced. There really is usually a lot to love. But at the end of the day, when you kind of look at it head on and you're thinking how good this album is, you're essentially praising someone's like tragic experience. You're kind of just looking at someone's life and hearing how bad it is, and you're going, yeah, this is good. It's obviously not quite as basic as that. You're not just listening to someone's story and then thinking, ha, brilliant art. You know, it's obviously not that. But just when you kind of think about it, I mean, music critics in general friggin' love it when artists have something sad to tell us all. You know, they have some kind of mental problem, they have some kind of mental health issue, and yet that's kind of the praise that gets thrown onto an album. We kind of just look at it and think, oh yeah, they really have a tough time right now and they've turned it into art, so 9 out of 10. And it really just seems to be like a common thing amongst music critics that they will opt for more sad music as opposed to happy music. Like, we accept sadness over happiness when it comes to art, and it's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know what it is about that, but I definitely think it's a trend, you know, amongst music lovers. Not necessarily a bad thing. Listen to what you want at the end of the day, and actually sometimes sad music can make you feel better. You know, it can be like a coping mechanism for some people, which is absolutely fine. And if that's the way for some people, then I wouldn't take that away from them. And I'm not saying in general it's a bad thing anyway, it's just something I've kind of picked up on. But for me, I think listening to someone's very heartbreaking experience in the musical form can be particularly intriguing to me, because generally I gravitate to more albums that I don't relate to. And I've mentioned this before in a previous video, like about relatability. When it comes to music, I might link that below because that was a pretty good video that I did a while back. But yeah, I mean, I tend to find it more interesting when I hear about someone's experience that I can possibly never relate to, because it's like, wow, this is something that I would never even think about in my own life, and yet this person here has put it to art and put it to music, and it's incredible. I'll be honest though, I had a fairly somewhat rough childhood, I guess. Some things happened in my childhood that were pretty bad. I'm not going to go into them, obviously, that's not what my channel is about. But I know for a fact that if I mention them to people, you know, people generally drop their jaw to the floor, like, whoa, that happened, and stuff like that. But as I've grown up, I guess I've ended up fairly tough with my emotions. It's pretty hard to, like, you know, bring me down or whatever. However, like, I know there are people out there that have depression, anxiety problems, bipolar, you know, plenty of other things that go on. And I know that if they were to listen to those kinds of music, they'd feel like they could relate to it. So I am pretty lucky in that sense, in that I've never really had to go through any of those things. It's just that at the minute with like music criticism, when you watch music reviews or read music reviews, it's becoming a bit of a baseline, like as if an album has to fit a certain amount of criteria. You know, if it talks about one topic in a sad way or a different topic in a sad way, then it kind of gets the pass and it's just great on the basis of that. But I feel like it takes away from the fact of how great art can truly be when you have an amazing songwriter crafting it all, as opposed to, well, this breakup album is pretty sad, so I think it's really good because the singer tells us their emotions. And I know that sounds very surface level, but when you do watch or read some reviews, like a lot of the time the critics don't really come to a conclusion as to why the artist has grabbed them in some kind of way. Like a lot of critics will just kind of talk about the things that they're talking about, but they don't really say why it's so good to listen to or what makes it so powerful. Like it's just, oh, it does this, so therefore it's great. So it gets me thinking, like, has music normalized sadness in the sense that a musician can generally just talk about sad things and that's it? Like it just wins them the Great Album Award or whatever. Like, I don't know, I'm not trying to take away the experience from the people involved with crafting the music, but generally, like, they could easily just talk about something in the most banal way and then it wins them the praise. Like, to be honest, musicians could easily just play to the target audience, play to the niche, play to that critic bait of what they know will get accepted. Like, as long as they just talk about sad things and maybe exaggerate a few things here and there to make it sound good, then they'll get the pass, they'll get the Great Album Award, Best New Music, or whatever else you want to label it. And that's kind of it, but they're not necessarily being honest or true to their emotions, but yet we kind of eat it up anyway. And I'm not calling every musician a liar, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, if I were to make my own music, I would definitely try and see what sticks, you know what I mean? Like, I'd definitely just play along with the sort of trends and see how easy people eat it up, like, just to kind of dick around and troll. I would definitely try and do that just to see what people would take on board. Musicians are people at the end of the day. They could easily lie, and as long as they're appealing to a certain demographic, it doesn't really matter because they're essentially selling their music to an audience that they know will like it. But how true is it? That's the kind of thing I'm playing at here. And the best way to take this argument and put it in the best context I can think of is breakup albums. Breakup albums generally come in many different ways. I know a lot of artists tackle them in different ways, but usually there's a sad underlying tone to the album that you can generally grasp onto if you've heard enough type of albums in this way. And some albums do it incredibly well, and some albums don't do it as interesting as others, but I feel like breakup albums in general are praised highly. But the thing with breakup albums is that you're generally just getting the one side of the story. You're just hearing it from one person. And that's essentially flawed in itself, because if you've ever had two friends that have broken up, then there's never just one side to the story. Never. And I'm not talking like shallow relationship fodder gossip shit that you hear at school or whatever. Like, I'm talking the true relationships, like two adults breaking up that are both your friends and you both respect them both in maybe different ways, but sometimes it could be equally. And usually it goes down in a way that you hear one side, and then as soon as you go to the other person, they tell you a completely different story, and then you go back to the other person and they tell you a completely different story. I've had this before, you talk to the guy and he'll be like, yeah, she said this to me, and she said this, and she said this, and this, and this. And it's like, oh, that sounds awful, like she really screwed you over. But then you go to the girl's perspective and it's like, yeah, but he did this, he said this first, and then so that's why I said that to him. And like, it's just like, and obviously I'm talking about straight relationships here, there are many different relationships, I'm not just, generalizing here, but I'm just making a point. One person usually plays a victim and the other person will play a victim in their kind of way. So the point I'm making is that a breakup album doesn't give you the full picture. So you may sympathize with the artist talking about their breakup whereas in reality they could have been the one that caused it all, but they're playing it so that they are the ones that you should sympathize with. They're not being self-reflective, they're not growing from this, they're essentially just writing about how sad they feel because they may have actually fucked up the whole thing, but they don't want to say that because of their pride. I feel like Brand New might be the best example of this. I mean, Jesse Lacey, for the entire of Brand New's career, you know, played his music in a very troubled way, sort of as a victim in some ways. People saw him as a relatable victim who was very troubled, and yet it came out that he had done these horrible things to women, and he essentially admitted to all of it through a Facebook post and didn't really show any remorse or any sort of responsibility for it all. He kind of just was like, yeah, I've done bad things in the past, but I'm not gonna show any remorse or show any condolences to my victims or whatever. You know, we've been sympathizing with this man for years in his music, and yet it turns out he was an arsehole. So it's just like how we need to make sure we don't take things at face value, you know what I mean? Another point I would just want to make as well is that, you know, we shouldn't really fetishize these things. Like, you know, a sad piece of music shouldn't be like over-romanticized by music critics because they like jizz all over it as if like it's a great thing to have these feelings. But like, it isn't, you know, it shouldn't be acceptable to feel these things. Like, we kind of ignore the next step, you know, like we often praise an album for its emotional power, but yet we're not really willing to kind of accept that people have problems and they need to take the next step to overcome the problem. Not that it's our job, but it's also not really our job to make out that, you know, it's okay for this particular person to have these horrible thoughts and feelings. And I do think that music critics accidentally do that. I probably am a victim of this too, but I just think it's important to sort of not romanticize this sadness and elevate it beyond anything other than the fact that the singer at that point in time was feeling bad, so they wrote a song about it. But I think some people may go a little bit overboard with it and then think, oh, I relate to this is how my life is, I'm going to listen to this album over and over and over and over without really thinking, hang on, I need to take this away from me and try and change something about how I'm feeling. And it's completely okay to be related to an album, but when the album is filled with so many horrible thoughts and feelings and like just an overwhelming amount of just sadness, then it's not really healthy, you know what I mean? And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, I'm not taking away from emotionally powerful music, emotionally driven music, people that love that kind of music. I, for one, love it as well and think it's incredibly thought-provoking when you listen to it. But I just think my points do stand on their own a little bit as well. Like, I think there is some truth to the things I've been saying, and I'm interested to see what people think, and hopefully people have some interesting comments. Hopefully nothing I was said got taken out of context or misinterpreted. I hope I haven't upset anyone by things I've said. If I have, then let me know. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you took something away from the things I was saying. Please do comment and let me know your thoughts. If you think I'm completely wrong, if you think I'm right, just anything. I'm interested. I'm an easygoing guy. I'm all for opinions, you know? It's all good. It's all good. Let me know. Have a good day. Have a good day.